Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Witchy Sour by Gina Lamanna, narrated by Wendy Tremont King. Chapter 1. You have got to get some sleep. I looked up, forcing half a smile at the surprise visitor lounging against the doorframe. Watching that safe is not going to bring your spellbook back, Lily, Ranger X said, sliding into the storeroom like a whiff of smoke. Despite his large frame, he moved like the wind, bringing with him the crisp, pleasant scent of the outdoors, mixed with something else, something sharper. Peppermint, maybe? Can I help you? No, I sighed, letting my hands fall to the table and my head slump onto them. I know your rangers are looking for it, but the magic of mixology is my future. It's not so bad. Ranger X clunked something on the table next to me, and a quick peek through my folded arms told me it was a bottle of wine. They say the true mixologist rarely needs to look up spells. It comes from in here, I know, I said, thumbing toward my chest. I had gone over this 1,000 times in my own head. But in here is a little confused right now, since I didn't even know I was a witch until a few weeks ago. Instead of responding with words, his hands, carefully, cautiously, came to rest on my shoulders. He let his fingers linger on my bare skin, waiting for an argument. I gave him none. With painstaking precision, he began to rub my shoulders, the skin exposed around my simple, spaghetti-strapped sundress. I groaned, a happy groan, the sound of stress audibly slipping from my muscles, before collapsing onto my arms once more, dipping my head onto a pillow of my own limbs. "You're wound tighter than a spring," he said, kneading each individual knot with care before moving on to the next. "Not healthy, Lily." "Tell me something I don't know," I mumbled, trapped somewhere between a state of bliss and shock. Ranger X had never touched me like this, and even if I'd wanted him to stop, I couldn't have spoken the words. There was a magic in his touch, a tenderness that had nothing to do with spells or potions. "You don't have to be here, you know. It's late." "I was heading home and saw your light on, so I decided to stop." "You just happened to be patrolling the aisle with a bottle of wine?" His pause was fleeting, his fingers tensing on my shoulders until he sensed the joke and laughed. "You'd be surprised at some of my terrible ideas." For some reason, the awkwardness of his response made me snort with laughter, and I straightened up, even though letting his hand slip from my shoulders was a sin. "I don't think it's a bad idea at all." "No?" I shook my head, finally taking a moment to tear my eyes from the empty safe where my spellbook once lived. This time, I focused, taking a hard look at the man who flipped my stomach in somersaults. X must have come straight from the office because he was wearing a suit, and that man could wear a suit. Unfortunately, he was missing a few pieces. Somewhere along the way, he must have lost a tie, along with a few buttons from the top of his white shirt, leaving it open a bit lower than it should be, his tan skin exposed. The black mop of hair on his head was ruffled, and if I wasn't mistaken, there was a tiny twig poking out of his messy locks. "Had some business to take care of before I came here," he said with an apologetic shrug. "Sorry about my appearance." I swallowed in lieu of a response. To me, he looked perfect. The scar over his eye decorated his expression, making him appear both tough and vulnerable. I raised a hand to his cheek, where a small scratch gleamed red. "You're hurt. Let me get you a bandage." Ranger X wrinkled his nose like someone had unleashed foul egg odor. For this scratch? No. He gave a devilish wink. Think this is bad. You should see the other guy. My eyes widened with a mixture of disbelief and horror. What did you do? Nothing. Nothing bad, I promise. I narrowed my eyes at him. Are you lying to me? No. He pursed his lips, his eyes searching for a way out of my interrogation. Want some wine? I gave him a slow roll of my eyes that showed I knew he was changing the conversation. However, I didn't have the strength to argue with him. Only if you'll join me for a glass. I'm already depressed enough without drinking alone. That got a smile out of him, and from somewhere in his suit, he pulled a bottle opener and went to work on the wine. You didn't plan this at all, I teased as he handed me a glass. I took a long sip of the deep red wine, the rich taste warm and comforting. Between the back rub and the wine, I'd be counting sheep in no time. What do you think about this? Ranger X followed my nod toward the empty safe. He strode around the room, his brown eyes soaking up every detail of the place. When he finally returned to my side, he set those eyes on me. He said something, a mixture of words that probably made sense, but since I was too busy soaking up his presence, I missed all of them. Those eyes of his were so dark they walked a fine line between good and evil. What do you think? He asked, startling me so thoroughly that I sloshed half my wine out of the glass. Yes? I quickly grabbed a rag and wiped up the spill. You weren't listening. It was a statement, one that curved the corner of his lips upward. I was asking if you had any theories about who might have had access to the spell book before it was stolen. Oh, well, I paused in thought. Gus, of course. The previous mixologists. I'm sure there are others who have seen it. Gus doesn't hide the manuscript. During the day, it's almost always out on the table in plain sight. He'll yell at people if they touch it. But I know for a fact that Mimsy and Poppy and Zinn have flipped through it when he's not looking. So, anyone who's visited the bungalow could have seen it. I wrinkled my nose. I suppose. We rarely lock it away. The night it was stolen was the first night we'd put it in the safe since my arrival on the island. Usually, Gus is here so late and back so early, he'll either take it with him or leave it out for a few hours. So, whoever stole it had to know it wouldn't be guarded. At least, not by you or Gus on that very night. I don't like the sound of that, I said. That would mean it's someone close enough to know our schedule. Ranger X merely raised an eyebrow. It couldn't have been, I said. With the exception of Harpin, I like everyone I've met on this island. Why would they steal from me? Does Harpin have a motive to steal the book? I bit the edge of my lip. Maybe. He's been angling for my job for a long time. If he had the potions book, maybe he'd try to take over. Use it in his tea shop to cook up something deadly, I don't know. Ranger X seemed distracted, and it took me a moment to realize he was staring at my lips instead of listening to what I was saying. Hey, you, I said, reaching out and snapping a finger in his direction. I'm talking to you. He recovered, as gracefully as possible, blinking and dragging his gaze up to my eyes. I was reading your lips. Yeah. Anyway, there's a spell system guarding this book. It's extremely thorough, according to Gus. I know the system. I've studied it. Ranger X shook his head as my mouth opened. Don't worry. I have no use for your light reading. If I wanted your mixology book, I'd already have it, Lily. Believe me when I say, it's not the book that I want. The way his eyes played over my face, I sensed there was something else he wanted entirely. However, now was not the time to deal with our personal history. You've studied the spell system? He nodded. I use it as an example when training new rangers. It's one of the most complicated security systems out there. Can you walk me through it? I asked. I've seen Gus's rough sketch, but I don't understand it. He's not the most patient teacher in the world. X's eyes gleamed. You don't say. Where is he, by the way? Went home for the night. Even Gus needs sleep, you know. I'll help, but then you must promise to get some rest, too. You were practically snoring when I rubbed your back. I don't snore. That's what they all say. All? I raised an eyebrow. Who does all include? Figure of speech. Ranger X grimaced, a slight red adding to the tanned color of his face. Lily, I'd never... I know, I'm kidding. I reached over and squeezed his arm. I might as well have squeezed a brick. Now, how does this system work? Hours later, well past midnight, Ranger X and I stepped back. I think that's everything, he said slowly. Isn't that enough? I surveyed our creation, a series of ribbons, threads of yarn, pieces of rope, all crisscrossing in organized chaos, and my eyebrows raised. All these spells, and somebody still stole the book? I asked, my voice colored with shades of disbelief and awe. How? That's the million-coin question, X said. Don't forget, there was also a spell on the safe itself. If someone who had never touched the book tried to remove it from the safe, an alarm would sound both here and at Ranger HQ. It never went off. So, that means someone found a way around the spell. That, or it's someone who has handled the book previously. Someone who understands the intricacies of the spell system, and someone smart enough to fool them. I sighed, not liking the list of names that were left for me to ponder. I can't think anymore. I have to get going, but it'd be a shame not to finish this wine. He held up the bottle, a hopeful look in his eye. Will you help me polish it off? I held up my glass. Can't hurt. It's good for you. Loosens you up. I crooked an eyebrow in his direction. You're trying to loosen me up? Not you. Everyone. Not everyone. Wine loosens everyone up. Ranger X closed his mouth and then started over. Do you want me to top off your glass or not? I laughed. This unsure, awkward side of him was one I rarely saw. When he was around his team of rangers, he was all boss all the time. I liked this side for a change. Come join me. Before he sat down on the couch, he bent over a never-used fireplace, muttered a few words, and a fire began to roar. Ambiance, he said briskly, as he joined me on the couch. We lounged next to each other, both of us sipping our wine in silence, pondering the maze of spells. To me, it looked all beautiful mind with a twist of chaos theory, and I was mostly glad there were people smarter than me to understand it. The only thing I knew for certain, however, was that whoever had stolen the spell book was somebody I knew, somebody who knew me, knew my schedule, knew the security system. That was a short list of people, and a list I didn't like to consider under the circumstances. Instead of running over that list of names, it was easier to close my eyes and snuggle up on Ranger X's shoulder. He worked nicely as a pillow. I curled my legs under my body and told myself I was only resting my eyes. The next thing I knew, my wineglass was lifted from my fingers, and a set of arms thick as tree trunks lifted me, cradled me, and carried me upstairs. I struggled to open my eyes through the haze, but sleep called louder than consciousness, and my body fell limp against Ranger X's chest. He deposited me as gently as he might a kitten on my bed, the fluffy comforter enveloping me as he tucked the edges in snug around my shoulders. "Good night, Lily Locke," he said, brushing strands of flyaway hair off my forehead. "Sleep tight." I might have mumbled something back, but already I was well on my way to slumber. When I woke in the morning, I found it impossible to remember if the brush of his lips against my forehead had been a sweet piece of reality or nothing but a dream. An orangish glow peered over the horizon and turned the sky a beautiful watercolor of cotton candy pink and Easter egg purple. Taking a seat on one of the bar stools, I cupped a warm concoction, both stronger and tastier than human coffee. Here on the Isle, it was known as a caffeine cup. I woke early this morning, despite my late evening with Ranger X. The memories of last night had me humming as I awaited the arrival of the regulars. The bungalow, as I'd so fondly nicknamed the beach house and bar combination, served as my home, workshop, and storefront. It was a cute place with purple and pink paint and large windows hugged by rickety white shutters. I greedily stole the last few minutes of peaceful quiet for myself. The palm leaves rustled, the gentle lake waves lapped against the white sand shores, and the sky grew powder blue and free of clouds. The beautiful climate, one of sunshine and balmy temperatures, was controlled by a nifty little charm that allowed the islanders to live under tropical blue skies year-round, despite our location in the middle of Lake Superior. The relaxing morning sounds were shattered by two bubbly voices carrying across the open sand. With a smile, I hopped to my feet and turned up the fire under the tea kettle. I waved at my cousins and set 2 more coffee cups out, along with a fancy beaker that looked like a chemistry set, to brew my infamous new recipe. "You're all ready for us. What gets you up before noon?" My plump, sunny cousin named Poppy bounced up the stairs to the bar and gave me a squeeze. "That smells delicious." I grinned and placed a filter on top of the beaker. Dumping a finely mixed potion the consistency of coffee grounds into the contraption, I winked. "And that's just the smell. Wait until you get a taste." "If that tastes as good as it smells, I might never leave," Poppy groaned. "You said you're looking for roommates, right? I'm ready to get out of my mom's abode. I mean, I love Chunk, but I think he can take care of himself." I winked. The offer never expires. I'd only known my cousins for a few weeks, but already I'd mentioned the possibility of them moving in with me. The bungalow had plenty of space for all of us, and it'd give them the opportunity to move out of their childhood homes. Unfortunately, we'd been so busy with the hunt for the missing spell book that the subject hadn't come up again. Resting a hand on my hip, I shut the burner off and poured the boiling water over the powder. The instant the water hit the mixture, the tiny grains bloomed up to 3 times their size, reminding me of a marshmallow heated in the microwave. The water dripped through slowly, and Poppy deeply inhaled the rich scent. "Is she okay?" I waved a hand in front of my other cousin's face. "Earth to Zin. Want some?" Zin was the exact opposite of Poppy. While Poppy was blonde and bubbly and over the top in every way, Zin was all sharp angles, jet black hair, and edgy attitude. "You're interrupting her concentration," Poppy said with an eye roll. "She's been trying to see if she's telepathic." Zin's eyes were closed. At the sound of her name, she took a few steps forward, feeling her way around blindly. She tried to sit down, but her hands grasped at air, and finally she gave up and peeked. Climbing onto a stool, she pouted. "I can hear you rolling your eyes, Poppy, and you should stop. I think I'm getting the hang of it." "You just opened your eyes to find the chair," Poppy said. "Forget it, Zin. You're not telepathic." Zin grumbled something, then swiveled the bar stool to face the counter. She closed her eyes and raised both hands to the side of her head, with her thumb and middle fingers touching in circles. She could pass for a far more feminine and far more petite version of Buddha. "Are you meditating?" I asked. "I'm telepathiting." "You look like you're meditating," Poppy said. "That's how meditators sit." "Have you ever seen a telepathic person sit?" Zin opened one eyelid. "Maybe this is how they sit." Poppy rolled her eyes and looked at me. "The Rangers have an open enrollment period in a month, and Zin's training hard for it." "I didn't know they had open enrollment," I said, pouring the concoction from the beaker into cups. I pushed the mugs over to them, and then filled another one for myself. I thought that was more of a recruitment thing. "It is, in a sense. This is the first time they're letting folks volunteer to be candidates," Poppy said with a smug smile. "I suggested it. She has to be chosen to participate, of course, but it's a small step forward." "That's great. I'm surprised they went for it," I said cautiously. "The Rangers seem strict." The Rangers were the darkest, the most dangerous wizards on the Isle. They walked the line between good and evil to protect the rest of us. A never-seen, never-heard sort of bunch. "Your boyfriend was a big reason that the program started." Poppy gave me the side eye as she took a sip from the mug. "You should tell him thanks." My cheeks flamed red. "He's not my boyfriend." "What is he?" Zin peeked through the other eyelid. Now both her eyes were open, and the only thing meditative about her position was the crossing of her legs and the circles of her hands. "Well, Ms. Telepathy, shouldn't you be able to tell me?" "Telepathy is a fine art. I don't just go reading each and every one of your thoughts," Zin said crossly. "It takes time, energy, and practice, and I don't have the patience to be focusing on your love life. I'm working on bigger and better things." "The only thing you need to focus on is not spilling your coffee all over the counter." Poppy nodded toward the cup in Zin's hand, which was balanced at a precarious angle. Foregoing all signs of telepathy, Zin groaned and swung her legs down from the stool, setting the cup on the counter. Poppy shook her head. "I'm telling you that telepathy is not a requirement to become a ranger." "What are the requirements?" Zin asked. "If you'd just tell me, I wouldn't have to keep bothering you." "She's been asking me this question every day since the trials have been announced, and she knows I can't say," Poppy said, turning back to me. She raised her mug. "This is good, by the way." "Why can't you say? The requirements aren't public?" Zin shook her head. "It's considered a natural fit process. What the Rangers look for in a candidate is largely a mystery. They say the true signs of a Ranger will emerge naturally, and if they give off hints, people will game the system." "That makes training difficult," I said, with a sympathetic look to Zin. "I'm sure you'll do fine." "Hold on, don't you wiggle out of this one," Poppy said, pointing to me. "Even though Zin's not telepathic, she's got a point. What is Ranger X to you? You can't keep secrets from us, you know. We're your cousins and your friends, so that's a double no-no. Spill the beans, Lily." "There are no beans to spill," I shrugged, stalling with a huge gulp of coffee. I took my time swallowing, but even so both pairs of eyes bored into my skull until I relented. "Fine. You want the truth? There's nothing between us. Anymore. We're just working together to find the magic of mixology, that's all. Nothing more than that." "Why don't I believe you?" Poppy narrowed her eyes at me. "I think there's more to it than that." "You're a skeptic, and you're as bad as Hettie trying to set me up on a date. I've hardly been here 2 months, and you all are acting like I'm turning spinster on my next birthday." "Well, you aren't getting any younger," Zin pointed out. "No offense." "You can't talk." Poppy jabbed a finger at Zin. "You're more interested in learning how to fight people than love them." "There are more important things than getting married." Zin pointed her nose up and sniffed. "I'd say becoming a ranger is one of them." "So?" Poppy asked sharply. Where's X now? Has he bought you dinner yet or something? I told you. We're just working on the case. Come here, I'll show you the map we made last night. Turning from the bar, I led the girls into the storeroom. Last night, huh? Poppy followed me inside, surveying the hectic display in the room. Did he stay over? Off to one side of the storeroom was the semi-hidden staircase that led a few floors up through a twisty, turny passageway. At the top was the attic. I warmed, thinking of my trip upstairs with X just hours before. No, of course not, I said. We were working, that's it. We have a working relationship. Your relationship is a piece of work, Poppy grumbled. Get over it and just make out with him already. I waited a moment, praying my ears would stop burning red. Look, do you see the ropes? That's what we were doing all night. Believe me, it wasn't romantic. What am I looking at? Zin stomped in a few minutes later, her leather pants making slight squishing noises as she strode across the bar with thick, intimidating boots that somehow looked stylish. The whole vibe matched with her leather jacket and heavy eyeliner, complemented by the straight-edged bob falling just below her chin. The style a little longer in the front and shorter in the back. I thought you were telepathic, I said, unable to help myself. Why don't you tell me? Zin crossed her arms. Maybe I'm not telepathic, okay? I'm still working on finding my uniqueness. Your uniqueness? Every ranger has some quality that makes them a unique asset to the business, Poppy explained. As the part-time dispatcher for Ranger HQ, Poppy often had surprising insight into the top-secret agency. For some, it's a learned skill, like the ability to kill someone with a pinky nail, or tie 500 different styles of knots, or speak 6 languages. That's a lot to learn, I said. What's the other option? Some have natural tendencies that make their uniqueness easier to learn. For example, there's one ranger who can sniff out a poisonous potion from miles away. He's got a natural skill, but he's trained himself to be the go-to guy when mysterious potions show up on the aisle. Those are the only options? I asked. Where does telepathy come in? There's one last group, Poppy explained. Those born with an advantage, the shapeshifters and whatnot. Those who can add a unique twist to the agency. It's difficult to find a uniqueness that hasn't been taken already, Zin said. I thought about knife throwing, but there's already an expert. Same with archery. There's nothing left. Why can't you have 2 people with the same thing? I asked. It doesn't seem like it'd hurt to double up. Poppy and Zin swiveled their gazes to me like I'd grown 8 heads. That's why it's called a uniqueness, Zin said, eventually. It has to be unique. But why? Think of it this way, Poppy said. Each ranger is a snowflake. This is not one massively trained army. It's a small group of swift, deadly men. The more people who know the secrets they do, the less private those secrets become, and sometimes those secrets need to remain buried. Each ranger has one specialty, and once that specialty is covered, that's it. In the event one of them can't continue to do their job for any reason, Zin started, but trailed off. Let's just say I'd be waiting a long time for an opening. That is why I need to make my own. I'll help you, I said. So will Poppy. What are you good at? Zin shrugged. I can shoot arrows. I can handle a knife. And I can smell a potion about 50% of the time. Poppy snorted. No way are you becoming the poison tester. Those aren't great odds at survival, so I won't let you. That's what I'm saying. Nothing stands out, Zin said, her shoulders sinking. I'm never gonna make it. That's not true. I moved to her side, squeezing her in a one-armed hug. We'll figure it out. Maybe it'll just take some time for the right idea to hit you. You're a shifter. What?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?